Hey everyone, so it's February 9th and it's still kind of wet and nasty outside, but the temperatures are up into the teens, low teens, and I've had enough. I got to start building this thing if I'm ever going to drive it again. So as you can see, the picture that you see right there, that's the block that I just brought back out of the house and got it back onto the engine stand, and here I go again, and the process from here is that I'm going to be doing a bunch of measurements, cylinder bores and whatnot, to make sure everything's up to spec. I guess you could consider it being maybe what I'm doing here is a partial blueprint of the engine. Certainly not a complete measurement, as we haven't disturbed the crankshaft. So most of what I'm going to be focusing on will be cylinder bore size, piston to wall clearance, piston rings, end gap clearance, and also I'll be more than likely taking a measurement of the rod big end bearing clearances for oil feed pressure purposes. So anyway, moving on. You know, blueprinting, it's not a, you know, if you buy a blueprint of the engine, you don't get a big sheet, you know, of blueprints. It's basically just a process of taking critical measurements and then comparing them to stock or to spec, making sure that everything's within tolerance. A true blueprinted engine, there would be basically no tolerance. Tolerance is so tight that they would be on the obviously on the tight end of spec, so to speak. So, and once again, true blueprinting would require me to buy several sets of everything. You know, pistons, rods, bearings, rings, several sets, and then making sure that every piston has the same diameter down to 100 of a thousandth of an inch. And the same thing with weight. The weight needs to be exact to within half a gram, if not even less than that. Bearing clearances, the weight of the reciprocating and rotating assemblies all needs to be the same. To properly blueprint an engine would be an incredible amount of work, very expensive. I don't have a machine shop here in my garage, so even though I'm going to be going through the process of taking measurements, unless I find something critically out of whack, there isn't going to be too much that I can do about it. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, making sure that everything's going to fall within spec. I'm particularly concerned with cylinder number 1, as we obviously had very low compression in that cylinder due to the broken piston ring lands. So I'll be looking at number 1 very closely, and number 2 was also an issue because in that cylinder we had some type of thermal something going on there, some type of weird lean condition running in that cylinder, and it literally melted the tip of the spark plug, broke off, and we can also see on number 2, on the top of number 2 cylinder, number 2 piston, if I can find it here. And I don't know how well this will show up on camera, but see how good it is. You can see, especially here, there was something bouncing around in there for a while. Come on, focus. There we go. Maybe if I stop moving it. Anyway, focus. Once again, a new camera, so I'm still trying to work out, you know, what the deal is. Why won't it focus on that? It's probably focusing because I've got it. The focusing setting is in the wrong position. But anyway, sorry guys. But there's pitting on top of number 2 piston. So And the third reason is this is probably going to be my only chance. Hopefully, I'm never going to rebuild this engine again. And this is going to be my only chance to play with some really cool, very precise tools. And at the end of the day, I can say that I did it, and I didn't miss any particular steps, and I know that the piston bores are nice and round. I don't show any egging, that there's no taper, which is a difference in diameter from the top to the bottom of the piston throughout its stroke length. Top, bottom of the cylinder through its stroke length. Just basically reassurance. You know, it's going to take some time to do all these measurements. There's a ton of measurements that need to be done, and I just want to make sure that before I start assembling everything and putting this engine back in the car, which is the part that I'm dreading the most, that I know I'm going to have a nice strong engine close to tolerance. So there's a guy on YouTube called Jafra, and he has the most amazing videos. If you get around to watching any of his stuff, just the guy's a world knowledge. He has a quotation in there that if when you're doing your blueprinting or if you're doing your measurements and whatnot, if you don't make a record of all the measurements, it didn't happen. Which I agree with him 100%. Write everything down. Make a spreadsheet, whatever. Take photographs of your of all your recordings. And I want to thank Jaffa for his videos. I've watched them several times over, and I think I'm reasonably confident in what I'm doing now. I wish I had the time to make videos like his. They're just incredible. So anyway, moving on. A little bit of a disclaimer here. I just want to say that this video is in no way meant to be instructional. I am far from an expert, believe me. It's more of a documenting, more for me documenting my experiences and my account of building my first overhead cam aluminum 4-cylinder. I've built many other engines before, but that was like 30 years ago, and they were all pushrod iron V8s, and certainly not anywhere near close to the tolerances that that these modern engines require. So hoping that anyone that views these will get some idea of the processes involved and come away maybe with just a little bit more knowledge, and hopefully you find them somewhat entertaining. I don't know. People seem to think I got a sense of humor. I don't know the fuck that's all about, but whatever. Okay, so enough of the intro. So the first section will be, as per the title of this video, intro to blueprinting. And this remainder of this video will be in regards to measuring cylinder bore taper, diameter, and egg shaping. And then we'll move on from there. We'll take measurements of the diameter of the pistons, and then make calculations as to what we have in regards to piston to wall clearance. So doing what we're doing here, I'm just going to move the camera around. There are some very specific tools that you need. Let's see if I can zoom back here. Yeah, let's move the camera back. So a couple of things that you need. One is a bore gauge. See that? And the way this guy works is, this is a fixed length here. In my case, I believe I measured it out to be 3.413. So the idea is that this slides down into the cylinder bore. You take a measurement, and the measurement will show up on the gauge here as a figure that you then need to take away from this length here. So subtract the measurement that is indicated on here from the length of this, and that will give you the diameter of the bore. And you take several measurements, you know, top, middle, bottom, and you also do it on the length of the crank and also across, perpendicular to it. And then that way you've got a nice, you've got a ton of good measurements that can be used to determine the condition of the cylinder. So that's that guy there. You also need a good set of verniers. In this case, it's just a jet set that I've bought recently. Really nice. Now, one other thing that Jafra said in his videos is your measurements are only as accurate as your least accurate tool. So you need to find out how accurate this guy is, and we do that by using a known quantity. Now, I've got another tool here that I'll be using later on, and it's outside diameter gauge. Now, this little guy comes with a machined 3-inch bar that you can use to, because we know this is a known quantity, we know this is exactly 3 inches long, we can then take the verniers, make sure they're closed, zero it, put the bar inside, difficult doing in front of the camera, of course. Bring it down, and I'm just going to get that in frame here. Well, this is a clusterfuck, isn't it? Here we go. Let's do it that way. So now, why didn't I just do this properly before? Well, there's a piece of editing that I might have to get out. So anyway, you should be able to see that. We know that these calipers are 2 thousandths too large, showing too large, actually 2.5 thousandths too large. Of course, I'll check that again. If you squeeze it in a little bit, you'll lose that that 10 thousandths, that 5/10 thousandths. But yeah, so I need to make a note of that, and you need to use that information later on in doing your final calculations. But I'll show you how that goes once I get it all set to go. So there's your verniers. So from there, what I've done is I've set up my whiteboard here. Set up my whiteboard here to so I can, as I'm starting to do my measurements, I can write everything down. So as you can see, I'm going to take a measurement, like for number 4 for example. We're going to go top, take a measurement top, middle, bottom in an x-axis, if you want to call it that, and then I'll take another 3 measurements on the y-axis, write them down, compare the two. If there's any difference, then we've got some egging, and then I'll also use the final figures from there to calculate the final bore diameter. Now, they only allow 4 10,000ths of an inch in taper and out of round, so it's pretty significant as far as accuracy is concerned. So we really need to be spot on here, and that's why it's so critical to make sure that your equipment or your tools are, for one, calibrated to a known length, because if they're not, then you might as well be taking a measurement of a piece of dog shit. Okay, so I think that's it. I think from here I'm going to yeah, I think I'll take measurements of 3 of the cylinders. Give me some practice doing that, and I'll get all the figures up on the board, and then I'll fire the camera up again and then show you the process once I've got some more confidence in doing it. and maybe I'll be a little faster at it so the videos aren't 6 hours long. I'll show you the last cylinder on camera and just show you how it's done. So I hope you enjoyed this section, and I shall be back in a couple of hours once I've got all these measurements up on the board. Okay, thanks guys. Bye.